Hello, everyone, and welcome back to this week's Substack Live at the Sustainable Media Center. As many of you know, my name is Emma Lemke, and I serve as the Director of Gen Z Advocacy here at SMC, and I'm so honored to be joined in conversation today with Steve, SMC's Executive Director, and Nicki Petrossi, a digital activist, host of Scrolling to Death and the Heat is On podcast, co-founder of Tech Safe Learning Coalition and the Scrolling to Death Foundation. And in general, Nicki is a leading voice on the issues related to kids, screens, and social media. So thank you, Nikki, for being on. And we are so excited to speak with you today.
Thank you so much, Emma. I'm excited to talk about this. There's nothing more important in the world right now, in my opinion.
Exactly. And, I've mentioned the domains that you cover and that you're a leading voice in, but more recently, you've taken on kind of this reporting role at a very important lawsuit happening in Los Angeles, California right now. So if you follow the news of SMC or just the mainstream media in general, you have probably heard of this case or heard the rumblings of how important it truly could be to holding big tech accountable for the harm that they are causing young people. Now, I could attempt to discuss the case, but I thought there was no better person to bring on other than yourself because you have been there and you're reporting on this. So, I think take us back first and tell listeners who are tuning in a little bit more about your story in general and how it inevitably led you into the courtroom.
Sure. So originally, I think back in like 2023, I was like, okay, there's some research showing that social media is really bad for young people. And I started hearing stories of children dying because of something that happened on social media. And I thought, shouldn't parents know about this before we're deciding to give our kids even tablets at young ages, getting them started on YouTube and getting them into that addiction at those young ages? I decided that we need a space where we can hear these stories and get education from experts in a safe and productive and non-judgmental area. And so I created Scrolling to Death more of like helping parents do a better job with what we can control in our homes. I quickly realized like no matter what we do at home, we're outgunned. We don't have full control over what they're accessing at school or at their friends' houses. Once kids get old enough, they sneak phones and devices. And so we needed laws, right? We need help from our lawmakers to help protect our children from predatory companies. And then I went on a journey of a year or two of, trying to get COSA passed, and we all kind of were involved in some federal legislation work. And when that failed because of many different reasons, I realized like, okay, maybe lawsuits is where it's at. Maybe some of these big legal tactics can make a difference. And that is really where it's been and where I settled into where we're going to find out what these companies actually knew, what the decisions they were making the decisions they were making to addict children, to harm children, not telling the public about it. And then eventually when we win lawsuits like this, there's going to be a financial hit against these companies that will make a difference in how they build their products more responsibly. So that's kind of the journey of how I landed on really paying attention most to the legal battles.
But
Absolutely.
but but you're also just, you're a leader, and I wonder if that came naturally to you. Like,
Mm.
you have young kids. A
Mhm.
lot of the parents that you're working with, sadly have lost children. You're not a lawyer. You've we've known each other long enough that to watch you kind of grow into this role is really exciting for the cause. The cause
Thank
needs
you.
you.
Thank you.
And it's hard. We watch you every day. It's hard work.
Mhm.
I mean, you talked about like just what it's like sitting in the courtroom. It's exhausting. I,
Yeah.
um, Talk a little bit about your evolution and how you came to be, Nikki 2.0 or whatever you think of yourself as.
That's a great, that's kind of how I feel. Um, so I guess when you say a leader, like I was always kind of, I'm the oldest child. I was always the captain of the team and the first one to raise my hand in class. And so I was always volunteering myself to be in charge. um, and so I think I knew I had my own business out of college, my own marketing business for a long time, had a really hard time delegating. I think that's just always been the role I've felt comfortable in. And so it was a good fit, I guess, for me to take on this new charge that felt really like something I had to do once I realized there was a need for it. And then once you learn more and more about what's actually happening, and then the families that did everything they could to protect their child and still lost them, there's no other option than to do the hard work sometimes, and the emotional work and the long hours and all of that. Like, there's never been a moment of regret. It's just kind of, I would think anyone would do it once they see what's actually happening to families and the scale at which it's happening.
And for those of you, for the people who, again, I think when I first came to the case and the lawsuit in general, I had a general understanding. I got asked to speak in front of a few media outlets. I had to brush up on it. But can you
Hmm.
give like a bit of a lay of the land? Like, what exactly is the case? I know people have been throwing like around the term like bellwether. Like, what does that even really mean in this regard? What
Hmm.
are the sides arguing?
Yeah, so it's basically thousands of families that have come together and filed a consolidated suit in the California State Court. And it's sometimes called the JCCP for short, and that's just a legal term. And it is they consolidate so that they can streamline the depositions and the evidence, because it's all so related, and all of the allegations are very, very similar. But because it's not a class action, they're going to be trying the cases one by one. And so the bellwether is just a group of cases that they're going to prioritize to try first. And I believe it's like 24 cases out of these, I think it's about 3,000 consolidated cases. And so the first of those being Kaylee, who is now 20 and is alleging that she was addicted by these companies, and that caused her to suffer anxiety, depression, body image issues, suicidal thoughts, and more. And so there's a separate grouping of lawsuits happening at the same time, which are called the MDL. This is another 1,000 families, and this is where also we have 1,500 school districts and about 30 states combined together, and that's filed in California federal court with very similar claims. So these are all pushing forward at the same time.
And
Fascinating.
Mhm.
when we started going down this road, like, did you have any secret in the back of your head? We have the evidence, we're getting the discovery, we're gonna win. Like, I know there's already been two settlements, right? So
Mhm.
Snap has already settled, and
Mhm.
uh, who's the other one?
TikTok.
TikTok. So those are, we don't know that. I mean, we don't know the specific number, but it's a
Mm.
big number.
I would assume it's a big number, but also to be very clear, TikTok and Snapchat only settled with Kaylee. And so they are still on the 2,999 other cases in the JCCP and all the other cases in the MDL. And so this is one, and Snapchat can't afford to settle thousands and thousands of cases in the, I don't know, millions of dollars. I don't know. I don't really have a good guess for
Yeah.
how much they settled for. Um, so sorry, what was the question? I started talking over you.
Did was your gut feeling going
Oh,
into this, we're going to start knocking over dominoes and have a real trajectory of winning, or has that been a delightful surprise over the last 10 days?
I think I started to hear from some attorneys on the case many months ago that who were seeing the internal documents. They weren't public yet, but these attorneys were seeing them, and they were telling me things like, it is worse than we thought. It is terrible what these companies knew, what we're seeing being talked about and studied internally at these companies. And so I had that information generally. And then in the lead up to before the case began, there was a lot of filings made public, expert reports and different motions that gave us little insights and little hints to things that were said in the internal documents. It would be like an expert's report, and the expert witness had reviewed the internal documents, and so they would give teasers of what those internal documents were saying. And so I mean, I was getting more information as we got closer, and it became very clear that this is something that I need to commit all of my time to cover, because even if we don't win this one case, just the exposure of these internal documents and presentations will change the way public views this, will get laws passed, and will trigger a movement towards safety.
Wonderful. It's extraordinary.
Mm-hmm.
And um, we've read some of the discovery, and it's harrowing. It's
Mm-hmm.
yet to and to have the two big meta executives, on the stand, and both
Mm-hmm.
essentially shrug their shoulders and say, "Well, but it's not addictive." It's like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, but the documents. So, for example, we could talk about some specifics.
Yeah.
The internal documents say we need the youngest possible customers we can get.
Mm-hmm.
Like 13 isn't young enough. How do we get younger?
Mm-hmm.
Which is just so dark. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, and for them to say that's not the case when the internal, or Zuckerberg kind of zips around as well, that I wasn't copied on that email.
Mm.
It's like,
Or he'll say, we were actually looking to create a separate, safer product. When we were talking about targeting kids under 13, it was with, Messenger Kids, or they did talk about doing a separate Facebook product or Instagram product for my kids under 13. But then you have other documents refuting that, saying things like they need to make, and I'm looking at a quote right now, like a slide deck that says opportunity, make Instagram relevant and offer unique features that speak to their lives at 11 and 12. And so that goes into like that they know that there are kids under 13 on there, and they are marketing to them and developing the product to be more attractive to that age range.
and it's important to say here, for you and I, Nikki, it's about our kids. It's because when we were that age, there was no such thing.
Mm-hmm.
But Emma, if you go back and look at her Senate testimony, that's exactly what she talks about,
Mm-hmm.
is like being targeted by that company.
Right.
Uh, and we've now spent enough time together at SMC, the three of us, that this is not a bunch of kooky parents.
No.
This is, well, no, because that's really what
Yeah.
Facebook's trying to say is it's the kid's fault. It's the parents' fault.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the
Right.
kid had a mental health problem. We didn't have anything to do with it. When you're sitting in the courtroom, you have a very rare view. Not only do you get to see the witnesses, but you get to see the jury.
Mm-hmm.
Um, uh, Tell us about what those faces look like.
Wow. So it's very multiracial. It's very multi-age. There's a young gentleman, I would say, who's maybe 20, and maybe a young woman that's 21, 22, 23, somewhere in there. All the way up to there was a couple of 70-plus-year-old men who've never even been on Instagram. Now, one of them actually had to go into the hospital for a respiratory infection and has since been excused in the past few days, and subbed in a woman, I would say maybe about 50 years old, looks to be a mom. And so it's just a wide range of people, all different races and genders and ages. And I feel really good about the spectrum of that. And they seem really engaged, I will say, as just observing how they're absorbing the information. They're following, looking back and forth as people talk and nodding. And I mean, there's some lighthearted moments and they're smiling. And so they're listening and they're paying attention. And they're not supposed to research the case when they go home, but I don't know how they can stay away from it. So, and they walk out of that courtroom and there's media all over the place. And so I'm sure they understand the gravity of the situation.
Yeah, when the New York Post put Mark Zuckerberg on the cover, uh, yeah, you never want to be on the cover of the New York Post. That's not where you want to be.
Mm-hmm.
Talk a little bit about. I know that the parents have been there. The parents have been out on the steps of the courthouse. They've been sleeping there at night to make sure they had seats in the courtroom because I guess Google had been hiring line sitters to try
Mm-hmm.
and hold places. Is that even legal? I guess it is.
I don't know the technicalities or the legality around that, but the court staff caught on really quickly and changed to a auction or raffle system. And so there was about the first 3 weeks leading up. No, I would say, okay, let me think. Maybe the jury selection period was all first come, first serve. So I was getting there about 5 a.m. to get one of the 6 media spots that were available, and they were gone by 6 a.m. And so you had to be there. The court doors don't open till 7, and so you're just sitting in the dark for a couple of hours there. Now, once the trial started and the media, like myself, were given badges, so we just have to get there by 8 and we can get into our spot in the courtroom. Now there were parents going into a first come, first serve situation. And that started to get really competitive. And there were companies, I think law firms and Google, from what I heard, paying people through TaskRabbit to come at 6 p.m. the night before. And there were shifts, one shift from 6 to midnight, and they would pass off from midnight till 6 a.m. And then the YouTube employee would walk up and the YouTube communications guy and tap him out. And so that was something that I observed and was really upsetting. And yeah, those parents did the hard thing and got there about 11 p.m. one night in the pouring rain and sort of slept on the steps, but kind of played cards and tried to keep each other company. And a lot of them got in that day. And shortly after, it did switch to that public lottery system because it was just getting too crazy.
I think average folks just have a little sense of how important this can be. Like, um, but for those of us who cared about this issue for now a long time, this feels like, I mean, up until this case, everyone would say civil litigation, and then they would say in the next sentence, Section 230, nothing to see here, moving on.
Mm-hmm.
And Section
Mm-hmm.
230 essentially shut down any possibility of victory in civil litigation.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that these cases were brought as product liability and it's a whole kind of, again, not a lawyer,
Right. Me
but
either.
I do understand that this is a very different approach.
Right.
And that's important.
Yeah, though I will say there's the Section 230 cloud is still hovering in the courtroom. Like there's still a lot of there's a lot of limitations on what can be said. They have to be very careful about anything related to content. There's a lot of objections, Section 230 content objections happening, interrupting, and there's attorneys having to navigate these really sticky arguments. And the judge admits, like, this is a really new situation. We're going to kind of figure this out together. But it's just incredible that these really, really smart attorneys were able to come up with a way around that immunity.
And in general, from a youth perspective, and I'm 23, but again, like I got on social media at 12. Um, from reading about the lawsuit, and I know I've talked with a lot of other young people about it, it seemed quite baffling that anyone could say that social media, specifically Instagram, like isn't addictive.
Mm-hmm.
And I know in reading through Messeri's and reading through Zuckerberg's argument, that's kind of the basis. I know one quote is like Messeri said, like, I don't think it can be clinically addictive. Can you talk through a little bit more about like the outrageousness of the claims that are being made from these big tech executives from being in the courtroom?
Oh, yeah. So they will only say the words problematic use, and they'll describe that as using Instagram more than you feel good about, similar to watching TV late at night. And so that's what they will reference. And in their internal documents for Meta, early on, you'll see the word addiction, but later you'll just see problematic use. And, that was refuted very quickly by Dr. Anna Lembke, who's like this amazing addiction expert. And she basically reviewed all their documents and said, anywhere they say problematic use, just switch that out with addiction. Like they're just subbing out that term when it really what
Mhm.
they're describing. And she reviewed like a dozen different specific features that are available on YouTube and Meta's platforms and found all of them, like 12 of 12, to be addictive to young people who are vulnerable to addiction. And so, yeah, it was a really interesting moment when Adam Messeri said, I don't find it to be clinically addictive. And Mark Lanier, the plaintiff attorney, was like, I'm sorry, I'm looking at your CV and I don't see where you got a psychology degree or any type of degree. Like, how can you make that assessment? So it was really clear in the courtroom what was happening there and what they were trying to cover up.
And by the way, we should just clear up the doctor that you're referring to is not related to
It's
Emma.
not my
Same
mother.
last
Oh, yeah. Isn't that funny? Do
I
you
get
get that a
asked that
lot?
all the time.
Yeah.
Oh, every single interview I get asked that. I would like to claim I would like to claim her as my own because I love her work and she wrote Dopamine Nation, I believe,
Yeah.
that her book.
Yes.
Absolutely wonderful scholar and individual in the space, but no, not related.
Her daughter was in
So,
the courtroom watching, which was had
Oh,
to have
that's
been
lovely.
tough because they were attacking her a little bit on from the other side. So I'm proud that they were able to be there.
so Nikki,
Yeah.
I want to ask, like, has there been a moment sitting there where you got angry?
There's a lot of deep breaths. I just did a deep breath before I answered. Uh, but because it's not like in the movies where there's like a big moment and it's a longer form situation. So when the opening statement, for example, for Mark Lanier was about was it about 3 hours? Like it was hours long, 2.5 hours long. Okay, so we're not talking about quick sound bites. We're talking about an arc and creating this story and taking us on a journey. And so it's more of an experience than it is like a boom moment where you are just shocked and you're wanting to yell out. Not to say there wasn't times where things were said and you're like, oh, like you roll your eyes. And even you see attorneys on the plaintiff side rolling their eyes sometimes at things that are said by Meta's attorney or some of the Meta executives there. So I will say the shocking things have been sort of the way that Meta attacks some of the experts that the plaintiff is bringing in as witnesses, and trying to devalue their character. Those are things that feel kind of yucky. And so they bring up some things and I think it's only going to get much, much worse when they attack Kaylee's family and parents. And so that's going to be really hard. But there was a moment this week where Mark Lanier and his team brought out this giant banner, and it was like almost 40 feet long and 3 or 4 feet tall, and it had a bunch of about 4,000 little tiny pictures, all of Kaylee's pictures, almost all of Kaylee's pictures she had posted on Instagram through the past few years, and like all these filtered selfies. And just seeing that, I mean, it took up the entire courtroom. It was really an insane moment to hold that up in front of the jury and have them process what her life was really like on this platform over the past few years. And you saw that recognition in their eyes.
I read about that, and I wish they brought that out in front of the courthouse. I imagined the image, but I wish I could have seen it.
Yeah, they
Um,
Mark Lanier said that he wanted to, but I don't know that they can bring. I mean, it's a piece of evidence. I don't know that
uh,
they're allowed to bring it out and show it to everyone like that. Maybe later when it gets publicly filed, there will be some imagery of it.
I'll tell you the thing I yelled at, and it'll be because again, I wasn't in the courtroom.
Yeah.
First of all, I wish somebody had turned their phone on and streamed the audio, but of course they couldn't. I yelled at the fact that Facebook turned the trial into a marketing opportunity for their glasses, and they had their employees wear them,
Yeah.
knowing they would be told to take them off, and knowing that that would become a media moment. I was like, that is just,
Hmm.
you know, because they didn't really
Interesting.
need to record the court. I mean, they knew they couldn't record in there.
That's
Um,
interesting. Obviously our first thought is, and Sarah and I in our weekly episode talked about this. First thought is advertisement. Second thought was this is an anonymous jury, and that means that the attorneys for Meta and YouTube aren't allowed to tell Meta and YouTube the names or information about the jurors. Because imagine the data points that those companies hold on these people and the way that they could sway arguments. And so there was thought then, were they trying to get images of the jury to scan in and find out who these people are?
so dark.
Yeah, it's conspiracy-ish, but you know, I don't know why they would. That is so against the rules. Like that, it should have been a bigger deal, to be honest. And the judge was very serious about the warning about it and scolding that happened. But that's a huge deal. It's a big no-no.
Talk about the tobacco analogy. Um, it's
Hmm.
being used. It's being said a lot. By the way, interestingly enough, first time, because I went looking, the idea that social media could be at a tipping point that's similar to the change in tobacco. This
Yeah.
is really the first time that that's made its way out into mainstream media. Um, does that
Mhm.
hold up for you?
Absolutely. And this is something you should have Sarah Gardner on of Heat Initiative, who co-hosts The Heat is On with me. And over at Heat, they are studying the tobacco movement and that arc that happened. And I've seen a slide that they show, and it has these different moments along this arc. And one of them being the tobacco trials. And it wasn't the last thing to get you over the finish line, but it was a really important moment in that arc. And so that's where we are, and the alignment of these companies knowing it's addictive, funding studies to show it's not addictive, lying to everyone about it, hiding it. Now we have this trial. It to me lines up exactly, although I will say I haven't studied it enough to speak to it more than that. But Sarah would love to come on and speak to that even more. But
Well,
everyone you talk to that kind of was around during that time paying attention, this feels exactly the same.
one of the things that I say to young people who don't remember the world before social media is, I'll say to them kind of casually, there was a time when you could smoke on airplanes. And
Right.
they look at you and go, "You're kidding. That's insane. It's a sealed tube." It's like,
Yeah.
and now you can't. So
Right.
things do change.
One
Things do.
teacher, I was interviewing a teacher about tech at school, and we were talking about cigarettes. And he said that they used to have a smoking quad or something at his high school. Like that's how normal it was for teenagers to be smoking, is the school sanctioned it. And that does remind me of like schools having kids communicate through social media for, this club or that sport. Like they are sanctioning and being like, okay, you can use this, and in some cases have to be using this addictive product in order to be on this in this group. There's a similarity there too.
So you're reminding me. I mean, there's a lot of things that have happened in the last week. Jonathan Haidt showing up. Jonathan is the leading advocate in getting phones
Mm-hmm.
out of schools. He's done amazing work. He's relentless. He's
Mm-hmm.
tireless. I've never seen him choke up before.
I haven't either. And I was squatting right in front of him. And he had just spent the morning, about an hour or so, having breakfast with probably a dozen or more of these parent survivors. And so I think it really hit him in that moment, what's at stake.
Yeah. Um, it's funny. I think Em and I are like, every day we feel like we're there. It's like we're
Mm-hmm.
following all our friends and we're reading everything and we're looking at all the feeds, and it's just like, um,
Yeah.
we
That's the goal. We want to bring you in to the
yeah.
courtroom in whatever way we can, not being able to have an audio or video feed in there.
So I know we're going to run out of time, but I have to ask one more thing, and then I know Emma has one more question.
Yeah.
Like, talk about the work of the Social Media Victims Law Center. I mean,
Mm.
and Laura, and they're just like I mean, speaking of driving force, I
Yeah.
mean, I'm pretty sure she doesn't sleep.
No. And SMBLC revolutionized this whole product liability approach that's being taken here. And it was really memorable this week because one of the two people that got in the lottery through the lottery system, one of the two parent survivors that got in the courtroom on Zuckerberg's day was Tammy Rodriguez, who was the first family with SMBLC, but the first family in the nation to sue on these grounds, to sue a social media company because of her. She lost her daughter Selena at 11 years old to suicide after experiencing basically every social media harm you could name. And Tammy got in that courtroom, and then after there was a press conference at 5 p.m. that day. Matt Bergman, who founded SMBLC, spoke to press, and Tammy said some words to press, and she did such an incredible job. But just to see the lineup of a couple dozen outlets from international outlets, national outlets, standing there hearing the stories of these parents and understanding the through line of what this is really about and the scale at which kids are being harmed. And this all started with SMBLC and Matt Bergman and Laura Marquez Garrett and everyone on that team and has expanded since then. I mean, the caseload itself, think of how many thousands of cases we talked about. So that now there are so many firms that have taken up this work, but it really just started with them, and we're so grateful.
Absolutely. And for individuals like me and Steve and beyond in the SMC community, the last question I have is really one, what should people be looking out for over the next coming weeks as the trial progresses? What should people tune into? And then
Mm-hmm.
two, where do people tune in for your reports, for the information, and to continue to stay up to date?
Great. Yeah. So if you're on Instagram, am doing live posting there and doing a lot of that also over on LinkedIn because I like that platform much better. But where I'm really driving people is to an email list at scrollingtodeath.com/heat. And there I'm sending near daily updates on what happened in the court every evening, but more importantly, weekly podcast episodes that show the whole everything that happened in that week and inside and outside of the courtroom related to this case. And so what people can expect to see is finalizing of the plaintiff witnesses through the plaintiff team is calling witnesses through the next week or two, and then we're going to transfer over to defendants calling witnesses, and then it's going to get ugly. It's going to get a little scary for Kaylee's family. You know, Kaylee's been coming to a couple things here and there. She wants to stay anonymous, but I don't think we'll be seeing her much until she's called as a witness, and probably her mom as well. So, you know, right now we're kind of in this place where we're unveiling a lot of truths, and it's great for the movement. And then we're going to move into this yuckier phase where we're going to hear the other side of it. But I think it's going to reveal how dirty and low these companies, how low these companies will go to try to defend their business model that we can very clearly see from their own documents is predatory. And so I think it will put the nail in the coffin, basically.
Okay, wonderful. So everyone, we will in the notes for this show, we will make sure we get all of that so that people know where to be directed to.
Awesome.
And the podcast is amazing. I listen, so I highly suggest that everyone
Thank
else
you.
does. So thank you so much, Nikki. We really appreciate you coming on and talking us through this. I know that this is just the beginning of the conversation we're having together about the
Yes.
case, and I really hope that it continues to be good notes, and that we continue to see progress here because again, like we said at the offset, this is an incredibly important case, and we just
Hmm.
really hope that it continues on the right track. So thank you for coming on,
Yeah.
and everyone, we look forward to continuing to have a conversation with you again next week. Thank you.
Thank
Thank you.
you.
And,